And welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Knowledge. If you guys could tell by the person on the screen, we are in for an absolute treat of a video. This is a video I've been looking forward to now for an extremely long time. But if you guys are not familiar with who's on the screen, this is Nat Turner. He's the CEO of Collectors, formerly Collectors Universe. They run Wada's Games, PCGS Coin Grading, Golden Marketplace, but most importantly, and the one we care about most on a Pokemon channel, is he's the CEO of PSA Grading, which was acquired in February of 2021 for a pretty whopping sum of 853 million. So Nat's doing huge things in the space, especially with Pokemon. But with that said, Nat, thank you so much for coming on this channel. I know this is huge for Pokemon.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And normally I like to get just right into the meat of it, but because this is the first time you're on a Pokemon channel, I got to ask you, for anybody out there who might not know about you as a person, let us know a little bit about your backstory just in collectibles in general. And how did you wind up being the CEO of Collectors and ends up acquiring PSA? How do you get to that position?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. So I've been a card collector my whole life. I started collecting cards probably when I was 5 or 6 years old, and really started getting more into it like 5th grade. I started doing shows like as a dealer, like even in 7th, 8th grade. Like my dad and I made like the display table and stuff, the booth, display case. I took maybe a 1-year break in 2001. In 2002, like that NBA season. I was mainly a baseball and basketball card collector. I never really did football. I did some Magic cards back then, but not a ton. Never got into Pokemon. I was a little old for that, at the time, and then, switched mainly into basketball.
Sure.
Yeah, and then got really back into it in 03 with LeBron, and then 2010, I sold a company. I'm an entrepreneur, so I sold a company, thankfully, in 2010, and I basically bought an unreasonable amount of cards that I wish
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, that I wish I had owned as a kid, basically, Jordans and Kobe's and like that kind of thing. Nostalgic buying, if you will, which is very dangerous. And then I got really into grading in 2012, 13. I was buying everything graded, but I started grading my own stuff in 2013, 14.
Now, were you going with PSA or were you dabbling between PSA and Beckett?
Both. Yeah, very much both. Most of my collection was Beckett because I collect modern basketball cards mostly, 90s, which at the time was mostly Beckett. And then I did vintage baseball, which is almost all PSA. And so I had very much both. But I started getting really into set collecting around 2015, 16, mainly vintage baseball and 90s basketball, trying to like PMG greens, PMG reds, that kind of stuff in basketball land. And then, so I sold another company, thankfully, and I got really excited about I never had cards as a business other than when I was a kid at shows. Like it was always, I'm a tech guy. So I was doing software companies. I never wanted to cross business with passion, I guess. But in 2020 during COVID, I went home to live with my parents with my wife and kids, just like a lot of people who lived in New York. If you were able, and my mom wheeled out my childhood card collection, was like, here, these are yours now. And I hadn't seen them in 30 years or something, probably 25 years. And it gave me this inspiration to actually, maybe my next thing should be in cards actually. So that summer, which is the COVID, like the first year of COVID, 2020, I committed mentally to do something in cards. And to me, the most important company in cards, like manufacturers come and go, just to me is grading. And at the time, PSA had become my grading company of choice. And it was that or nothing. I was looking at other stuff, but it was really that or nothing. So put together a group, and I couldn't afford to buy the whole company. It was a big number, but put together a group and yeah.
I mean, congratulations, because talk about perfect timing when it came to the absolute monster wave and flood of cards that hit PSA and graded in the lockdowns. I mean, it was perfect storm type situation. But so that's like one of the questions a lot of people have on their mind now is turnaround times. I know it's something that you guys focus on a lot, but one of the questions a lot of people in the chat have been asking is, it seems like some of our cards are being shipped to California, but then they're getting shipped to Jersey and then they're getting mailed back to us from Jersey.
Yeah.
Is that as simple as you guys have such, good shipping rates with FedEx and UPS, it
No,
makes more
no,
sense speed wise, or is that
no.
no?
It's
So
a
what?
very simple reason. Our antiquated software on our PSAcard.com website doesn't allow us to tell you where to ship the card,
Really?
the order. That's the only reason. So in the near future, the PSA Online Submission Center, it's depending on what you submit. So like, if is it a Pokemon order or is it a vintage card order or whatever, the submission center, when you're done, will say, great, here's your shipping label, and it'll automatically decide California, New Jersey, etc.
Oh.
So that's the plan. The plan is, it's completely dumb. You have to send it to California now and it goes to New Jersey.
Is this something we could like skip the middleman in a way and just email customer service and say, hey, what's the PO for Jersey? Is that something we can do?
Not yet, because we're not staffed enough in New
Okay.
Jersey. So we're timing that with the website change, to actually have receiving basically be staffed up enough to accept those orders. Believe it or not, when you like the people think, oh great, you have 500 cards in an order or whatever.
Yeah.
Our average order size is much smaller than that, and so it would be an enormous amount of boxes that would show up in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Especially given, and we do, I think that it's not really a secret, but like we do focus on TCG, Pokemon, especially out of New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
That's the grading talent that we were able to transfer from California to there, but also the folks who've been able to hire and train. It's really focused on that. So
Okay.
it's a lot of boxes. We just don't have the ability to accept them yet. But the plan is to allow customers to be able to drop off and ship to New Jersey.
Okay.
Hopefully soon. So
Yeah, especially if, I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Connecticut, so I'm pretty close to Jersey. So it'd be nice to just be able to ship my
oh,
cards
trust
right
me,
to
I know.
Jersey.
Yeah.
Post
Well,
it across
I
the
will tell you,
country.
you can drop off there. You can arrange a drop off
Okay.
through customer service. We just
Oh,
don't have the shipping, like the receiving for shipping there yet.
Oh,
So,
that's okay. That's good to know. I was
challenge,
curious how you
yeah.
were going to answer that, but that was as straightforward of an answer
Yeah,
as I could
that's the
get.
reason. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. But now let me ask you a question. I want to ask you a little bit about pack rating, because I know you've talked about you're real big. And on sports, you guys call it wax. In Pokemon, we're super stubborn. We call it foil.
of course,
It's super semantics at this point, but I know you're big into wax grading. Now, this is where we're getting like down into the weeds and like the speculation. Has PSA changed their pack grading standards? Because it seems like some of the packs that have been graded recently have become a little bit harsher. Like in the past, no one kind of knew even what a PSA 7 or PSA 6 graded pack even looked like. Like it was only 8s, 9s, or 10s, but now we're starting to see those lower grades.
You're talking about foil or wax?
Foil, yeah.
Yeah, we haven't changed the standards. I'll tell you, we take foil pack grading. And by the way, I collect most of the packs I collect are foil packs, like 90s basketball foil packs. So I have a full appreciation for it. I just got back in order, and yeah, I got like, I think I submitted 50 packs from 1997 Topps Chrome, and I think the highest I got I got like 2 9s, and most were 8s and 7s. I think we're just taking it very seriously. I mean, I don't think the standards have changed. I think we're just being, we're applying the standards maybe more consistently, than before. When you look at foil packs, and we're doing a lot of this in the California office now, actually, foil pack grading. There's actually more than people realize that go into it.
I have 137 cards out to pack rating right now. So
yeah.
when the potential of pack rating standards getting changed, there's like a little part of me like, uh-oh.
No, it's not. Like I said, it's not changing. We're just being much more consistent in applying the standards.
Okay.
But not in a way that should have resulted in a major, grade change at all. It's,
Yeah, no, I mean, this is very anecdotal, but one of the guys in the hobby, he had a Japanese base set booster box, and so it's 60 packs as opposed to the English 36, but he took a random sampling of 10 packs, sent them away for grade, and got 8s and 9s, and then he sent 10 packs from the same booster box and got 6s and 7s. So I know there's always that danger.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Like I said, we're putting more and more resources into pack grading, especially foil pack grading in California with, we're training new folks. I was actually there a couple weeks ago talking to the team about it. I mean, it is an extremely fast growing category for PSA pack grading, especially foil pack grading. So I think it's just us, being much more, rigorous. Not that we weren't before, but like we just more training, more QA, more verification, that sort of thing. So
sure. So I've heard rumblings that you've thought about potentially doing like a booster box grading or sealed box grading. Now, obviously what happened with the fake first edition Pokemon case that was verified by BBCE and all the fake, that obviously being fake. So there is probably this big worry for you, especially when it comes to sealed booster boxes. Is that something you guys are still keeping in the back of your mind, or do you not see that as being a possibility in the future?
It's always a possibility. I mean, we're very close partners with BBCE. We think they're the best in the business, at especially vintage pack, box, and case grading and authentication. Love those guys. There's no changes on that. We don't want to, get into case wrapping or box wrapping. That's their business. That's not our business. Mm-hmm. We have looked at encapsulation, of boxes. So not wrapping the box in cellophane or which I think is a very useful service. I mean, I have boxes all over the place, and, displaying them in a foil or in a cellophane wrapping is a lot different than a big plastic case.
Yeah.
But we've looked at it, and I think we're still open to it. We'd probably still leverage BBCE for, if you send us I know we would, if you send us a 1975 Topps box, wax box, there's no chance in hell we would, know how to authenticate that versus better than BBCE. So we'd only encapsulate it therefore if they saw it. As it relates to Pokemon and modern stuff like foil and 90s basketball, we do have a lot of expertise in that. I wouldn't say we're confident enough yet to be like, yes, this booster box is good to go. The truth is you can't really authenticate any of them without opening them. You're taking
that's a problem.
Like I have sympathy for BBCE with the Pokemon case. I mean, obviously it was a huge mistake, in general, but can you really blame them? They didn't open it. I'm sure no one wants their sealed case unsealed, right? It's just really, really, really hard to authenticate things you're not allowed to open. The same goes with wine. I don't know much about wine, but I'd imagine, without opening the cork, is it wine or is it vinegar?
Yeah.
We have that analogy with unopened packs and boxes and cases. And so we're uncomfortable with certain, maybe we do the vintage stuff first where we can leverage BBCE as a partner. But, there's a lot of fraud out there in Pokemon unopened packs and boxes and cases, as we've seen. So we're being very cautious. Yeah,
especially because there's more money moving into the hobby. And the second there's more money, you get all the scammers come out, and you'll be amazed at what people will do for, 10, 20,000 when some of these booster boxes are starting to reach that dollar amount. But,
the money, I mean, look, the fraudsters follow the money. So,
yeah.
Now,
I know PSA is just killing it right now. So in June, from according to GemRate, you guys graded around 999,000 cards. For sports, it was about for sports, it was 598,000. For Pokemon, around 401. Again, this is from GemRate. You probably have the truest of numbers for that, way more than anything that we're able to scrape pop reports and stuff like this. But opposed to your nearest competitors like SGC, they graded around 97,000 cards. Beckett, 74,000 cards. So you guys are huge multipliers close to above your closest competition. And one of the things that your competitors have, especially Beckett, is they do have that black label. Now, I was watching some lives in the past with you on, and you said you have talked about potentially having a grade higher than the Gem Mint 10, which that scares me to death because I don't want to see that. But are those real conversations you have had at PSA, potentially doing a higher 10?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a higher grade. It would be a subset of 10, but no, it's not something that's in our near-term plans. We've what I've said before is true. We've had prototypes hey, what would it look like? Okay. A good example is the 86 Fleer Michael Jordan PSA 10s, number 57. Those cards, there's 320 of them, PSA 10s. You do not technically have to have 50-50 centering top, bottom, left, right, front, and back to qualify as a 10 in PSA's grading standards. And that's a card where left to right is pretty much always the issue, centering. And that's a card, I know this is a Pokemon channel, but I'll just give you this example. That's an example of a card where you in theory, PSA could look at it and say, sure, this is, 50-50, blah, blah, blah. And then maybe it's the top 1% or top 10% of the 10s we designate as being perfect or whatever. Not something we're thinking about launching, but, again, in a hypothetical academic approach, yes, that is absolutely something you could do with the higher pop 10s if people had a desire to distinguish between them. We see it happen anyway in the market. like you go on eBay, you go on wherever, Heritage, etc., like you will see the better ones sell for more than, in the same grade.
Yeah, those strong versus weak 10s. Yeah, you see it all the time.
Yeah, and like you see the eye appeal stuff. I know there's other things being out, NBA and other stickers. Like we're kind of letting the market decide, that for now. I don't think we want to be in the business, as you said, of like, is there a better 10 or whatever? And
yeah,
PSA.
no, I'm hoping you guys don't ever go that
Yeah.
way, but I've heard you in other lives mention them. Like,
Man,
oh,
look,
like
we're open to innovating and mixing things up. I mean, but we're very thoughtful about doing any of that stuff. We're very aware that we have tens of millions of cards out there that have already been graded, and the last thing we want to do is affect the value of things out there. So unless it's extremely warranted, for future hobbyists and collectors. But again, it's not something we're doing. So
I mean, especially being innovative. I know you're now photographing every single card, and that's just been, for anybody who like sells on eBay and stuff, to be able to just go right to that card, look up the cert number, or just go right to your submission, have all those cards right there, have like the high res photos front and back. That's been a godsend to a lot of people out there.
Yeah. Well, one thing we will do, and I'll tell you, I mean, I've talked about this before. I mean, we intend to have more and more information available on that cert lookup page. Things like you can imagine, like we are adding like date graded. It's just, it's hard, believe it or not, when you have like 30 years of databases, you have to figure out how to combine and pull from. But that's an example. Another example could be centering. Like we actually do automate the measurement calculation of centering.
Oh, okay.
People don't really realize that, but yes, we have graders looking at it and confirming, but we do have a AI system, if you will, that detects centering, and that's something I could see us putting on the as metadata on a verification page. Like if you're curious, you don't want to pull the ruler out yourself. Oh yeah, it's 58 42 left right, great.
Oh, that would be real interesting if you guys did that. That's
we're thinking about it. Like again, we're doing more, and we have a roadmap of things we want to include on that. Again, super thoughtful about each one because they all have implications. Can't guarantee any of it, but that's kind of stuff we're thinking about.
So what are your thoughts just on AI grading in general? Like obviously you're dabbling it with using it as more or less a centering tool, but you always need that human element. At least that's where I come from. I've heard you talk about it on past lives. Like you're also sort of a believer in that you always need to have some set of human eyes looking at those cards.
Yeah, I'm not a believer in. I think you can do it. I mean, I think I've seen it with my own eyes. Like, sure, you can put a card into a, scanner and grade it. I get the technology. I'm a tech guy myself. Like, I understand it. Yeah. As far as PSA goes, my belief, I don't think we have no intention of being fully automated. We're going to take the approach of tech assisted human grading. Let's say 5 years ago it was 100% human. I think if we're inching our way towards 90-10 and then 80-20, et cetera, but never replacing the human element, look, I'm a card guy too. Like holding a card, this is gonna sound weird, but like the smell of the card, the feel of the card,
I know exactly.
Yeah, the surface, like you can, especially with vintage, it's just not. I don't think it's smart to grade it fully automated.
Even Pokemon. And the thing about cards in general is you could look at that same card. The longer you spend looking at it, the longer you can find defects and stuff. So
so that's just not our plan. But our plan is to do tech assisted human grading. So we intend absolutely, like I was saying on the cert verification page, to provide tools to the research and grading teams that make their job, I would say, more efficient, easier, but frankly better, because they can do what they're best at, which is determine grade and authenticity with little recommendations. Like, for example, hey, the system noticed that this card resembles a fake counterfeit that was submitted 6 years ago. Look for, like in Pokemon, look for the stamp that is maybe
in the right spot.
Like we could detect, like Desert Shield's a good example in baseball, like the palm tree. Like we have tons of knowledge at PSA on all these counterfeits. That's just an example of something technology can do to assist the grading team.
Now you brought up counterfeits. Have you found that, because obviously printing technology nowadays is just getting so much better, are you guys finding it to be more of a struggle? Are you seeing better fakes come through today opposed to any time in the recent past, right? I'm guessing.
Every year it's better than the year before for, what the things you see for scammers. And Yeah, I mean, we see it. I mean, I'd say Pokemon, unfortunately, because the money's there now. I mean, in the last 10 years, as you know, probably better than most, like the values have really escalated, especially on the early stuff. It's the payoff is bigger if you get a card through. And we have to, in other words, our job to stay ahead, it just gets harder and harder every year.
Yeah.
So we're trying really hard to stay ahead. We have like a 9-person machine learning team. All they're doing is like counterfeit detection software.
Oh, wow.
Like it's pretty tough stuff, and we have some really cool ideas. One of the coolest things we do at PSA actually, which is relatively recent, but since we got here, is literally every single card. I don't care if it's a $1 Pokemon card or a $1 million Mickey Mantle rookie. We scan every card front and back and we save that image, and anything that happens to that card, was it graded? Was it not graded? Was it determined to be trimmed? Was it determined to be counterfeit, et cetera? It gets tagged to that image. So we have and you quoted the numbers. I mean, we're seeing millions of cards a year. We're accumulating, therefore, millions upon millions of images of cards. And that's very valuable data for staying ahead of fraudsters. And so I don't want to go into too much depth because, maybe some listening, but especially with Pokemon, like we have a full dedicated team now and all they care about is TCG, but Pokemon mostly, that lives in our research and grading teams. So we basically specialize teams to only look at those cards. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, they're getting better and better at it, the scammers. So
yeah. But you were talking about how you have more and more people focusing on like the TCG aspect in Pokemon. Now, I mean, it's my hope and it's my belief that I do believe that someday Pokemon will surpass sports. I mean, it's been pretty close the last couple months. And if you look at it on like individual sport basis, whether it's baseball, basketball, hockey, football, they surpass it on individual sports, but at a category, they're still lagging a little bit. But is this something you guys are hyper aware of at PSA, of just like the explosive growth that is Pokemon currently?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, it's bigger than football and basketball combined.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, there's a reason why we have specialized teams now. I saw the question in the chat. I mean, we're actually, I don't want to go too far, but we are planning on a lot more specific TCG and Pokemon content, potentially with our magazine as an example. We have a lot. PSA Registry is another big opportunity for us with our collector base, our customer base that collects Pokemon. Yeah, we have a lot of ideas. But I mean, I'd love to hear any more of them, but I mean, it is I would say our largest single category. It's bigger than any of the sport. It's bigger than baseball.
Yeah.
So
it's pretty crazy when you think about it. And I mean, I'm just sitting kind of like, in a way, like just sitting on the driver's seat, watching all this happen in Pokemon. And it's week after week, month after month, year after year. It's just crazy watching this just compound into Pokemon. So
I see the SMR in your background, like our old SMR, the now PSA magazine. Like we get a lot. I mean, unfortunately there's some difficulties with we can put Steph Curry on our cover, which is the most recent cover, but we can't put Charizard because Charizard's actually an IP copyright character of Pokemon Company. Okay. So there's some complexity for us that we're navigating, and we'd love to develop a closer relationship with the Pokemon Company to help collectors with more content. That's something we're working on. But yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's our most I would say fastest growing category, and arguably the most important for us going forward. So yeah.
So I know you're going to be going to the National at the end of this month, correct?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I know in Pokemon, we don't really have the National. That's definitely, I mean, it has some Pokemon, but it's mainly sports. But we have like collecticons, and I know PSA does show some representation at these collecticons. Yeah. But man, I would love to get you at a collecticon, especially Charlotte Collecticon this year. It's like the weekend of September 16th and 17th. And some of the biggest Pokemon collectors in the entire world are going to be there for that one event.
In Charlotte?
I would love to get them face to face with you.
Which date? Sorry.
So it's the weekend of September 16th and 17th.
All right, I'm going to put it on my calendar and see if I can make it.
But yeah, if we could get you there, I'd love to put you in front of like a TCA game and some of the really big names in Pokemon, Gem Mint Pokemon.
Yeah, no, I would love to. Yeah, if I can make it work. I have it on the calendar. I'll see if see if I can make it happen.
I mean, you guys already have the booth there, so and
No,
then
I know. Yeah.
then
No,
you could watch all those guys, make sure they're doing their jobs right.
yeah.
From the boss is here, so
No.
that would be a lot of fun. But
They're not worried about me. Yeah, I'll look into it for sure. It'd be cool.
yeah. So obviously, a lot of people talk about price for grading, and it seems like we've been for at least Pokemon, the $15 TCG special. We've been there for a couple months. Is this something you guys are potentially going to ever lower the price? And I don't know why we keep coming to this number, but everybody keeps saying $10 grading, which
I know.
$10 is far away from 15. You still got 14, 13, 12, 11.
Yeah.
But I always say the one thing about PSA is, in a way, you guys, you must know this, you guys control your own destiny, right? Because if you're great, if your prices are low enough, all competition like ceases to exist in a way. And imagine Pokemon as just a dam holding back water. Like, you guys control that valve to the dam, and there's just hundreds of thousands of gallons of water, or in Pokemon, hundreds of thousands of cards just waiting to flood the PSA. How are you able to just like look at how much you're getting in, determine prices, and do you ever see that arbitrary number of $10 grading ever coming back? I know that's a large question.
No, there's a lot of questions in there. It's really hard. I mean, honestly, what we do now is we look at our grading team and all of the teams surrounding grading, because they all matter for capacity. And we look at how many cards we can grade on a daily basis. We call that DAUs, daily average, units. And we try and balance demand with supply, if you will. And it's somewhat hard because you don't really know what's going to happen when you roll out a particular price. It's taken us, I've been around here for like 2.5 years at Collectors and PSA, and we've developed a lot of learnings with like, okay, if we at this price point, this is how many cards we expect, and so on and so forth. And then we run certain specials, we see certain information, so we've become smarter. But again, the truth is we don't really want to accept more cards than we can grade. We have a lot of scar tissue from what happened in 2020 and 2021, and a lot of this happened before we got here. I'm in hindsight, 2020, I bet we would have made the same mistake. PSA was receiving 100,000 cards a day, and we're only able to process 24,000 a day. And that happened for like 9 months. And you can do the math. What happens is you get a 10 million plus card backlog. And if you're still at 24,000 units a day, DAUs that you can actually support, that's a year plus of if you shut down, which is what happened, right? And so we shut down in April 2021 or March. So we don't want that to have to do that again. And so we're very nervous about lower pricing, not because nothing with revenue, actually. We just don't want to have turnaround times return to the dark ages for us, which was 21 and 22, early 22, before we fully reopened and had capacity now more than doubled from where we were at that low point, or when COVID really rocketed our demand. And so that's the way we think about it. And so what we're doing to return lower grading prices is to grow, which we've done. I mean, by the way, $15 is much cheaper than when we reopened.
Well, 600 originally. Yeah, that was
like, well, I'm saying when we really reopened, it was, I don't know if you remember, we were doing like submission events at like $50.
Yeah. I sent some at the 50, some at
the like
30.
Lotteries were like, but that was because we couldn't, their number of cards that we would have gotten would have been well more than our capacity, and we would have had the same problem we did before. So we were very careful to keep that balance. And so to answer your question, yes, we'd love pricing to be cheaper. For us, it's an exercise in growing capacity. And the way we grow capacity is very carefully because, like I said, we do have a human element to everything we do. We think that's the best product and service. And so it's hard to hire humans, train them, and, do all of that. So we're really focused. That's why, Japan, we just launched. It can take that's actually addition through subtraction for us in the United States. We can do more units in the US now because we don't have to ship the Japan units to the US and ship them back. So not only did we add grading capacity in Japan, we increased capacity through subtraction in the US. So these are the math equations we're always running. And, I anticipate we're going to grow our grading capacity more and more, which would allow us to lower the price, hopefully, for collectors over time.
Oh, yeah, especially. And one thing beautiful about Pokemon, and you've talked about it earlier in this live, is you're big into set collecting. In Pokemon, there's a lot of like cheap set cards, and the only way you're going to ever complete that master set is you can't really do it at 15. I mean, you take a
Understood. Yeah. Same with vintage baseball. Yeah.
Yeah. So if that cheap rate ever does open it up, it just opens it up for that set collector. And speaking of set collector and in like the PSA registry, I know you guys have really been pushing big into the PSA registry, and especially pushing in, you guys are now doing all the reward systems. Is that something you guys are still just looking to really grow into the future, that PSA registry?
Yeah. Yeah. The set registry, to be honest, is the lifeblood of PSA. It's like I said before, it's mostly dominated by sports collectors. It's an imbalance. We have some TCG Pokemon set collectors in there, not more than a few, but it's probably the most popular thing I can think of at PSA when it comes to sports cards. Like we have tens of thousands of people every day logging into that system or in the mobile app, the set registry mobile app. It'll soon be integrated with the PSA Vault, actually. So when you buy a card and put it in the vault, it's instant ownership, possession. So you can instantly add it to your sets if it's in your vault account, as an example. So we've got a lot of stuff coming on that. TCG, though, is Pokemon in particular, is a huge opportunity for set registry. We do have a TCG dedicated awards category that we're going to be announcing soon. That the awards will be given at the National next Friday night at our set registry reception. But I think it's like 10-1 currently, sports set registry users versus Pokemon. And it's probably going to end up being the reverse in 10 years if I had to guess.
Yeah. So we recently hit the 30-minute mark, and I know how valuable your time is. So I don't know if you want to do maybe one more question, or if you're good to go for 10.
No, I'm good. Yeah.
So good. Cause there's a lot of questions, especially you just mentioned the vault. And one of the things that I really like about like other companies like eBay is eBay seems to always be looking at the future, and they're growing a lot of their services. And you just talked about the vault service. Like right now, I know probably you don't see a lot of people submitting to the vault, or at least probably not at the amount of people you like to see submit to the vault. But can you kind of explain to everybody out there, what is the vault, and what's your future plans for that vault?
Yeah, it's actually pretty widely used. I mean, it's a secure facility in Delaware that we built. It's the PSA Vault. It's branded. We control it. We own it. We operate it. It's huge. It's like well over 10,000 square feet of storage space. We actually have plans for more facilities around the US and potentially on the same site. But the coolest part, you can ship your cards there from your house. They have to be graded currently. You could have your eBay purchases, or anywhere you buy, you could just have a unique address from our vault and have your card shipped there, get email notifications when they arrive. And once they're in the vault, you can manage your collection. You have images. We take high-res images of everything. You get real-time pricing. We have this thing called a PSA estimate, which is the price, a machine predicted price for the card based on auction prices. But one of the cool parts is it's integrated with PSA directly. So when you're submitting a card through an order, you can just say ship to the vault when it's finished grading. And we get thousands of cards a day from PSA.
Okay.
People say, hey, when the card's done, don't ship it home to me, ship it to the vault. And once it's in the vault, you can sell it. Right now, Golden's an option to sell. We anticipate maybe other options in the future as well. Or you could have it shipped back to you or transfer it to other users, whatever. So it's basically, and it's free. So it's basically a third place to keep your cards, my office.
That's awesome.
And
the eBay Vault's something I'm super excited for in the future. And I think there's going to be a lot of ways, especially if you, like you mentioned, as a seller, to just kind of have them do all your packing for you. But real quick, Pokemon Radar, I do want to go back. You talked about opening up the PSA in Japan. Are those Japanese? Are they going to be, those labels going to be in Japanese, or are they still going to be in English?
They're going to be in English. Yeah, we've thought about, that's a great idea and question. We've thought about this a lot. I'm not making any statement to say, English is the language, but we're an American company. Most of the cards, 100% of the cards we've graded are in English, the flips.
Yeah.
We want cards to be fungible around the world, meaning if a card's graded in Japan or the United States, it should be sold. It could be sold in Germany. It could be sold. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. And, we have a lot of the feedback we got was that if we put the flips, the labels, we call them, in Japanese, they would actually sell for less potential in the US, because US collectors couldn't, by and large, read the labels. Yeah. And it makes those cards, it almost creates two populations of cards. And we want the cards to be universally fungible, meaning it doesn't matter where they're bought and sold, they're probably the same price, all things considered. And so that's the reason we chose to standardize on our US grading scale, obviously, but also flip standards. Flip meaning the actual label, which of course language is probably one of the biggest parts there too. I'm not saying never, but like that's the way we approached it currently.
And you just mentioned labels, and I know fraud is a big issue, not just on the cards you're receiving, but fraud's also a big issue with people copying PSA slabs and, doing real shady stuff there. And I've heard you mention in the past, are you guys looking at new technology to go into the labels? I know you mentioned like microchips, very similar maybe to like your credit card, or is that something that's still potentially a chance of happening, or?
Yeah, so we do this with coins. We already have NFC chips. I'll tell you, it's not a foolproof system. Like you can crack out an NFC chip and put it in a fake slab. So or program your own. I mean, it's not a foolproof. We do have some really cool ideas. I mean, there are dozens of things in our slabs that both covert and overt that you may or may not realize that but the problem is only PSA really knows these things.
Yeah,
it's like we want to train the end consumer collector to know these things too, not everything, because we want things to be covert where only we have the key to determine if the slab is real. We have a lot of cool ideas, and we very quietly, it's probably the first time I've publicly talked about it, we very quietly have rolled out a new slab. It looks the same. You probably haven't noticed. It's not for Pokemon, so it's probably the wrong audience, but for modern sports cards, it's an entirely new slab, but it looks the same. It's 20% heavier. It's better plastic, harder to counterfeit perfectly. We can tell the difference. Like when we see one, we're like, oh, like obviously it's not the same. But there's a lot of new features in this slab that, we have under, particular lighting, for example, that we know it's the real one. But we have some really cool ideas. Pokemon is the next slab that we're updating to this new. It's like, it's the customer benefits are better UV protection. It's harder to crack. Like you could run your car over it. We actually had someone on Twitter the other day. His dad literally ran over the PSA sub box and the slab didn't crack.
Wow.
And absolutely would have, if you crack, you could if you take a hammer to an old slab, it could shatter. This new slab, it's much more permeable.
Yeah.
You'll notice the difference. If you start cracking some of these new ones, please don't. But if you did, you would notice the improvement. As part of these slab upgrades, we're doing a bunch of security features. We've got some really cool stuff coming though, for sure.
Yeah, and especially that I'm really interested in that UV protection too, because I know that's like a complaint for a lot of people is that slabs offer very, very little, if any, UV protection right now. So to have an increased UV protection, you're not going to tell anyone stick this by your window and let the sun shine on it, but to have a little bit of that will be nice. And the fact that and you said you wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. So even though the plastic's maybe a better quality, a little bit heavier, they're still going to stack on your old slabs the same. There's going to be no difference.
Oh yeah,
there.
That's the thing. They look the point was we didn't want to make old slabs worth less or whatever. Okay. We upgraded the plastic. They're actually, you to the naked, to the untrained eye, it's the same thing. But I'll promise me, if you take 10 cards in a new order, put them on a scale next to the old order, and they're going to be
that much heavier, huh?
20% heavier. That's because it's a higher grade plastic. It's more expensive for us. That's fine. We took a lot of feedback in from collectors that they wanted, a higher quality plastic. I'll tell you another benefit of them is that they're less prone to damaging cards. It's very rare, but we do have these things called pixel damage, where over time a card if it can move at all, which you want a little movement in a slab, if there's even a tiny, tiny, tiny little imperfection in the plastic slab inside of it, in theory, it could create a scratch on a card. This does happen with Pokemon. These new slabs, they're so much smoother and higher quality that it frankly eliminates the risk of what we call pixel damage. It's more of an issue with Chrome cards, like Chrome basketball cards and baseball cards and stuff. But, we do see it, And I see someone in the chat talking about sleeves. Like we've looked at sleeves. We do Mylar sheets. They're basically a sleeve, just without a pocket. Aesthetically, they're not great. And frankly, you can have the same exact damage from sleeves as you can from the hard plastic. We do a lot of testing on this. We have these shaker tables where we put a slab and you basically simulate as if the thing is moving, for hours upon hours. And yes, it's better if you have this old plastic I'm referring to, but with this new plastic, you don't really need sleeves because there's less movement and the surface is perfectly smooth.
Oh, that would be awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing these slabs in Pokemon down the line. But are you ready for a little bit of a spicy question? Because shout out to one of the people watching, Catch 'em All Collectibles. He had a question he wanted me to ask you, and I know it's a little spicier one. Why is it sometimes when we submit cards to PSA, like if we have a submission a week apart, sometimes one of those submissions magically like starts to go through the grading process a little bit faster than the one the week before? Is that just an internal thing on your guys, or?
There's so many factors. It's hard to explain. I'll try my best, but it's not perfectly first in, first out, because some orders are bigger than others. People aren't willing to admit this, but sometimes when you submit cards, you have a card. You may not realize it, but that one card is more complicated to grade or more complicated to slab, or any part of the process is more complicated. Maybe it's too big, maybe it's too small. And our orders move as an order. So when it's like a snake, the mouse goes in and it gets digested, it comes out. You can't take out one card. You can't, everything moves with an order. For example, if you have a card that's autographed, guess what? It has to get autograph authenticated. It's as if it's being graded twice. So there's all these things. We call them edge cases, but in reality, almost every order has an edge case. So therefore, it's not really an edgy thing, right? It's every order has complexity. Some days we can grade smaller card orders faster. Some days we say, you know what, we're going to do, we got behind on 500 card bulk orders. We're going to crank those out this week, right? There's just so much complexity and diversity in what people submit, and we take it very seriously. So if a card requires lamination, if it's too small we don't want it moving around the holder, that adds potentially weeks because there's only so many people that are trained to do that. So that's really the answer. It's kind of an it depends, but I get this, like, it's probably my most common complaint, but I would say 99 out of 100 times when I ask and I look at what the order is, I'm like, oh, well, it's because you have, this one card, and it could just be a standard size card, but guess what? It may have common counterfeit, risk. And, we have an extra set of eyes look at it internally. We have all these flags set up in our system where it's like, oh, you submitted this card, such and such needs to look at this card before it's passed. That kind of thing.
Yeah, and you mentioned turnaround times, and turnaround times is probably like the biggest thing right now when it talk about grading. But can you rewind just a little bit and go back to when you had to have internal meetings, whether it was through you and the board members or whatever, and you decided to say, we got to stop the bleed and we can't accept any more cards. Was that one of like the harder decisions you had to make? Because at the time, you were relatively new to PSA to do one of the biggest decisions PSA has probably ever done up to that point, is saying, okay, we're not accepting any more cards.
Sorry. So the question is what exactly?
What was that conversation like when you were having it? Was it just this?
It was honestly one of the easiest decisions we've ever had to make. Okay. I was very nervous about it when we were going to make it because, I was expecting there to be a blow up of people being like, screw you, I want to get my cards graded. And I was probably one of those people who wanted to get, but like the truth is too, like you can't take cards in if you can't get them. Like, what's the point? Mm-hmm. We were, like I said, on a daily basis, close to 75,000 cards a day greater in receiving than we were ability to process. Yeah. So it's a very easy decision. Like you literally will never grade those cards if you don't stop. And it wasn't a competitive thing. Like we didn't care, like sure, a bunch of cards probably went to our competitors then, but that didn't matter, to us because we were so behind. The company was going to get ruined, right? If we just forever had a year plus turnaround times. Yeah. So we had to just bite the bullet and by and large, the response was positive. I mean, I honestly don't even think like I read a single, I read a lot of social and I'm desensitized to most of it now, but like back then, like there was very little, if any, negative on that decision, which I'm happy about, but that was not what I was expecting. I was expecting it to be brutal, but like I said, it was an extremely obvious decision at the time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were accepting of the shutdown because we all knew it was out of a necessity and just a need, and it got pretty rough. But when you see turnaround times, especially for bulk and for TCG, do you have that like sweet spot in the back of your mind where you're like, I would like to keep turnaround times at like 90 business days or 60 business days. Do you have that?
Yeah. So we have a goal internally. We do these things called OKRs, objectives and key results. Our objective is to have turnaround times be less than 90 days across every service level.
Okay.
I forget about I forgot what cards I submitted if it's more than 3 months ago, personally. Yeah. Maybe I'm not smart enough, but I think in general, if it's more than 90 days, I don't know what the hell what you're submitting.
Yeah.
That you'd be comfortable with that. Meaning we think it's on us to be faster than 90 days or better. Doesn't matter what you're paying. That's the goal.
So when you acquired PSA, and I mean, you go in and obviously all their like product lines or assembly lines or however they're doing these graded submissions, it's already set up. Did you go in there and notice any failures in that system where you had to do a big push? Because anytime you do a big push, especially when you have a lot of employees who more or less get set in their ways, they're like, we don't want to change the way we're doing this. We like this. Did you have to make any of those tough decisions, or did you keep a lot of stuff the way it was?
It's been nudging. Look, I'm not an operations expert. I'm a technology entrepreneur. So I'm probably the last person you want opining on what's the appropriate assembly line or whatever operational flow. We have awesome people, leaders, and also individual contributors across the operation that are much more qualified. And what all I did was hire those people and make sure I got it right. And so I would be very remiss if I didn't acknowledge them. We definitely changed the team, I would say. Not that the old team was bad. It's just they hadn't seen, maybe they hadn't seen this level of scale. So, we brought in folks that, were familiar with, frankly, much bigger scale than PSA may have never even get to. But certainly what we see now is, I don't want to say child's play, but it's they can kind of do it in their sleep. When you say, hey, we're going to go from 24,000 a day to 60,000 cards, they're like, no problem, and, the heads would explode of the people, prior to, it's just the tour of duty, the folks that, served you well in the first 10 years and not necessarily the folks that served you well in the next 10. That could be the case for me one day, right? There could be someone better, to steward, I'm the steward of the PSA brand, if you will, and collectors for the time being. And so that's the way we viewed it. I mean, technology investment was very underwhelming for decades plus at the company. Rightfully so. It wasn't no one, I think, pre-COVID would have expected this level of scale and complexity, and the industry just blew up as well, which demands, collectors demand more services, images, better set registry, mobile app, all these things, and the counterfeit detection, whatever. And, PSA didn't have that level of budget prior. And we basically said, you know what, we're comfortable being less profitable in return for getting more engineers and software folks that can actually make these things happen.
Yeah. So I remember once upon a time, your predecessor, Joe Orlando, when he rolled out, just made the Pop Reports public, because there was a time in PSA's history where the PSA Pop Reports were hidden behind a paywall. You need to have a membership to access that. And I remember that being a huge thing. So we're just so far away from little things like that.
Yeah, we've got a lot more cool things coming. Yeah.
Is there anything any tea you could spill of a potential thing we could look forward to? I mean, right now we have 282 people. They're just Pokemon. Is there anything?
I've said a lot already. I mean, the My Collections Vault stuff integration with Set Registry and PSA is going to get better and better. The platform nature of that and the ability to collect what you want in real time and make it really fun, safe, and easy is kind of what we're focused on. We've got some really cool stuff coming in the mobile app. If you haven't downloaded the PSA app, you should.
I have.
Even if you don't grade, it's really cool if you grade. There's push notifications now for most steps of the grading process, but we've got grade reveal, and maybe you've seen, which is cool.
Yeah, when it flips a card for you.
Yeah, but that's gonna look minuscule compared to some of the things we've got coming. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So Rattle Pokemon is actually the one that uncovered that fake.
Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah.
And Rattle has a question. He says, has PSA learned that they shouldn't have middlemen partners, even official ones, instead of opening their own warehouse, forward and service in other countries like the UK? And I know I did see somebody else mention, is there any plans for PSA to expand to the UK? Because we've already talked about Japan in this live, but there's a lot of people right now watching this in the UK. Is that a future goal of yours? And because there's been issues with the PSA middleman, and I know a lot of conjecture from each party of like, did they really pay? What happened to that money? Is this stuff you guys have like learned from, or?
Oh God, yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, in Europe more than anywhere, we had two, I mean, like awful experiences with I don't even want to give them the credit of calling them dealers. I mean, these weren't even, it was bad. And we ate it. Like, we never got paid by Ludkins as an example. Like, we're giving those cards back to the customers without any compensation to us. The collectors paid,
They paid
middleman.
Ludkins. How many cards is that for?
Hundreds of thousands.
And PSA ate all that, huh?
100% of it. In fact, we're paying our partner to additional money to disperse those cards on our behalf in Europe because we don't have an office there. But to answer your question, yes, we do. Well, we are going to have dealers. I think we're going to be much better at background checking and diligencing the dealers. We added more dealers than we should have during COVID. We are retracting the dealer program a bit to make it harder to be a dealer and minimum requirements and that sort of thing. And so it's been, yes, and I agree, it's Ludkins UK, not Ludkins US, for who mentioned it.
Yeah.
But I think that's understood. But yeah, I think for us, we intend to do exactly what we did in Japan recently in Europe. So in other words, we want to have local grading in Europe. It makes no sense. I agree with you that people have to ship their cards across the Atlantic Ocean to California. It's crazy. So yeah, that's our plan. I think the question for us is, when and where, not any question of budget, or, I mean, it's an obvious thing we're going to do. So
is this something you're actively doing, or is this something that's kind of just in conversations?
No, we're look, if anyone here, wants to help us with that and apply, we have an open position on our website actually for a full-time PSA employee in Europe. So by all means apply. I mean, we're gonna have an office. We're gonna, I mean, yeah, our plan is like we did in Tokyo, as I said, where we're gonna have an office first with a team that can be a concierge, full-time dedicated PSA employees, where you can drop cards off, orders, we'll batch them up and send them to California or New Jersey. That's step one. But then as we get confident in the relationships and the people we have, then just exactly what we did in Japan. It took about 2 years, but within 2 years we had local grading. We just launched it last week in Japan, Tokyo. And so that's our plan is we need to find those leaders that can, be the advocates for, okay, here's the people we need to hire and the relationships we need to have, et cetera. So
that'll be exciting, especially I know a lot of the European guys. I know them personally, and that's one of their big complaints, that they definitely want that.
Yeah, no, look, we get it. I mean, I think Canada's another one for us. It's easier to ship because it's less risky, but there's just as many issues because it's at the end of the day, two different countries. But I think Europe is, I don't know. I mean, look, I'd love advice. I mean, if it's London or should we be somewhere else? I mean, we're trying to figure that out. The crazy thing for us is, like, in the US, Pokemon's 30 to 40% of our business. In the UK, it's 85%.
Wow.
And so it's going to look much more like our New Jersey facility than our California facility. Like, we don't need vintage baseball card graders in London, for example. So it can be easier, but it's trickier in that we need to find the people first to launch it. So
somebody asked a question about like, what are the steps PSA is doing to not damage cards, like during the encapsulation process? And if there's anybody that has to write that check when a card is damaged, you're the person to talk to. You're the one writing the checks. But
look, it happens. Like, at the end of the day, we're handling cardboard, and it's very delicate. I mean, it's actually really, really rare, but because we're seeing tens of thousands of cards a day, it happens every day.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the cards are only handled, they do not come out of the cases before grading. People have asked me that a lot. Like, you see your images and stuff, like, we're not taking the cards out until they have to be taken out. So they're graded, they're put back in, and then they're only taken back out once they're placed in the slab right before sealing.
Okay.
So yeah, we've decreased the amount of handling of the cards a lot. And this is something I care a lot about is card safety.
Mm-hmm.
we have more automation in the sealing process. For example, we have cameras that take pictures of the slab before it's actually boomed or sealed, where it detects if the card is perfectly in its rails. So for example, one of the most common damages we see is the card is slipped inside before it's been sealed. It's been slipped in between the rails, and then it was sealed and then pinched, we call it.
Yeah.
You know, we have like it's now not automated, where a machine is literally looking at it, and it like Willy Wonka, it's like a good or bad, like a failure.
Yeah.
And if it detects a potential pinched card, it kicks it and forces it to be reassembled. That's actually decreased damage a lot. But yeah, I mean, look, it's a human. At the end of the day, you have to, you know, there's going to be damage. It's just not. We've made it very much rarer than it used to be, and you know, I'm sure we can be even better.
Yeah. But no, Nat, we're coming up on the hour mark, man, and I just want to say, I know your time's valuable, and I don't want to make you keep talking.
Yeah,
I know how valuable your time is, but I know this live was a long time coming, and I cannot thank you enough for coming on. I know the chat's been super engaged. There's currently 295 people watching us real time just talk about cards. So
yeah, I love cards. I'm happy to talk. I'm always happy to talk about cards.
Yeah,
no problem.
But no, like I said, Charlotte Collecticon, September 16th through the 17th. I'll be there. There's a couple different Collecticon events that happen throughout the year, but Charlotte's going to be the one where like some of the biggest collectors are there, and I would really like to get you face to face with some of these guys. And
okay, yeah, I'd love to try. I'm gonna look at it.
And I know there's a lot of stuff going on in Pokemon right now, and you know, one of the things great about sports cards is sports cards a little bit more of an established hobby, where Pokemon is moving to more of that established hobby because it's a relatively younger TCG. You know, a lot of people were in 99 and then they grew up, got out of it, and they're all getting back into it today. So I think the growth in Pokemon right now is going to be parabolic in a sense in the next coming years. So,
okay.
But
yeah, I agree. I'll try, hopefully see you in Charlotte.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Thank you again. And for the 289 people that are currently watching this, guys, for everybody out there, I appreciate you. I know I could speak for Nat. Nat appreciates you guys. Thank you for all. Thank you guys for everything. Thank you guys for joining. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And as always, we'll catch you on the next video.
See you guys.